All right. Hey, Chris here. And if you've been around at all, then you already know Caitlin. She's over on this side, or I don't know, she's somewhere. Then you already know Caitlin. I've joked around that if we had a Swift Galleries mascot, like Caitlin would be it. She's our biggest cheerleader. She has become just a pretty fantastic friend of ours. And I'm thrilled to have her back on to bring a completely different perspective um, on things. So as you guys know that I talk a lot about like high touch, low volume kind of photography businesses, really creating an experience, like basically trying to work with fewer people so that you can serve far fewer people far better. Caitlin has really transitioned her business. I think that's safe to say,
Mm.
transitioned your business to primarily a higher volume type business. And since I respect the hell out of Caitlin, I figured here what it is that she's doing because I want you guys to get some different opinions and some different ways to do this whole photography business thing. So, with all of that said, Kaitlin Roten, everybody.
Yay. Hello.
Yeah, let's start with this. People have heard you talk about your in-person sales process and the results that you got from switching over, and now you're taking a new direction in your business with this high volume stuff. Give us a rundown of what that is in your business. What does that mean, high volume, and what are you doing?
Yeah, so I have mostly switched over now to doing school photos. And what that looks like mostly is me and my team going into mostly preschools. There are a few charter schools and private schools that we go into, and we do the pictures that you grew up getting, but different style. And so we photograph all the kids, sometimes the teachers, if we're doing yearbooks, and we do it a little bit different style. And so every parent gets maybe 10 to 15 photos of their students. And sometimes we even do sibling photos of the kids together. Yeah. And we're hitting about 15 schools, and that's based out of where I'm located in Florida. And then I also fly back to Dallas, where we just moved from about 2 years ago to photograph about half of our schools there too.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, has it already been 2 years since you
Yeah,
moved to
it's been
Florida? That's
about 2 years.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right. Second of all, one thing that I think is really important to note that Caitlin just said is that she said she and her team. So sh- she owns this company that is doing these things rather than just because, yeah, I started as a school photographer, but I was just like like I was just the guy that my job was literally to just press a button. So this is a far cry different from what it was my experience with school photography, not only just because you are the business owner, but we did those just like I said it before we went live. It was smile kid, click, smile kid, click, smile kid, click. I joke around that what I did, a trained monkey could train other monkeys to do what I did. It was just that formulaic and that, I don't know, conveyor belt style like photography. And it sounds like with you doing like sibling stuff and parents getting, did you say up to 10 photos of each kid?
Up to 10, depending on, I
Yeah.
always say, how cooperative the child is.
Right. Yeah. Yes. That sounds completely different from what I was doing. So let's take a step back
Mhm.
to even get started in this because I'm not even sure like how would you even say, okay, I want to start doing school photos. So I'm gonna go negotiate a contract with a school. Like how
Right.
does this happen? Was it more organic than that or
It was pretty organic. I think the story kind of sounds like how a lot of photographers got involved in photography in the first place. I was sitting in my daughter's preschool like parent meeting, and they were talking about how to raise money, and I was saying to myself like, I haven't seen school photos this year. And then I said out loud, I think I could take the school photos this year. And then I was like,
right?
what was I
Those weren't the right
thinking?
words.
Oh, so it originally started out as a fundraiser for my kids' preschool, and I did them outside, and parents really loved them. And it was at first, I knew nothing about, I was actually just making it up as I went.
Okay.
There wasn't any rhyme or reason. Like I think I had, like, marshmallows, like a bag of marshmallows, and, like, if the kid performed really well, they get a marshmallow, which is terrible. I would never suggest that to anybody.
As the kid of
So
a diabetic, I'm yeah, or
right.
as the parent of a diabetic
Don't
kid,
do
I'm
that.
gonna be like, yeah, please don't do that. Yeah.
And yeah, there just was such a great response from them. And so then I loved how I could work during my kids' school hours. So it didn't take away from our family personal time. And that's actually one of the reasons why I started IPS in the first place. And so this idea of working during my kids' school time really latched on just because I love my family time. So I want more family time and working during my kids' school hours. So that was perfect. And so I I loved it, and I really liked how I got to photograph each kid for 1 to 2 minutes, and then I was done. I didn't have to spend a whole hour family session with them, and if they were crying or upset, I could either ask the teacher to help or I could just send them away. "Oh, I'm sorry." Like, I honestly, I we try our best, and we have awesome tricks up our sleeves, but it's just great. There's just some kids that for a variety of reasons. So that actually is really nice, and our tricks really work, and I was thinking how can I market this to other schools? And one of the other schools that I got shortly thereafter, I knocked on their door, which is super weird. This was before COVID, and they asked to see I had this like packet, this folder with all these photos in them. And the teacher said, "Wow, these are really good. I'll talk to the director." And I was like, "Yeah, she's never going to talk to them." I got a call back and they just were looking for this outside school photography experience. Not that I'm only outside now, but I was. And so then it just snowballed with people telling other people, other school directors, and yeah, have gotten up to 15 schools, which I feel very proud of. That's a lot.
Right. Right? So do you do those during specific seasons then? Do you try to do all 15 kind of back to back so that the rest of your year is fairly open, or what does that look like?
It used to be before I had these 2 locations where I would mostly do the fall photos in October and then the spring photos in April. And that was mostly because Texas weather, that's like what you get the best options. But now that
Yeah, like you can actually go outside. Yeah.
so now that I'm dealing with 2 locations, I try to space the Florida schools out a little bit more, but then I do have to compact the Texas schools since I'm flying out there for about a week. And then I also have another photographer and an assistant out there who will do some schools that don't fall in that week that I'm out there. So it's hard when they're compacted all together. I actually prefer them to be a little bit spaced out just because I love the turnaround time for the photos to be ready in 24 hours, which is
Holy
really
cow.
crazy and really hard to do when you're shooting like 300 kids, photographing them a day. So that's pretty tricky, but the editing is really not that difficult as a side note. So yeah, it's hard, but then it also, if I space it out a little bit more like August and September, then I have more October and November free to do family photos. And the same is true about spring.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't even think about that you're doing both seasons, fall and spring
Mhm.
photos for them for each of the
Yeah.
schools. How many students are in, what's the average number of students that you have per school?
I would say the average is probably about 150, but
Okay.
we have a max of one of the schools that we do in Texas is 600 kids. That's amazing. But then we have the little preschools who have maybe 60 kids. 60 kids you could definitely do in a day. 600, you have to have 2 photographers and split between 2 days.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. That's a beast. That's incredible though. It's so fun to hear you talk about this because I don't know that people realize like that's a really big deal to land a contract with a school that's that big. That's a big deal. And I feel like I can say I've known you now for a minute or two. It's really exciting, Caitlin. I
Thanks.
didn't
Yeah.
realize that you had, that's awesome. Okay. So,
Cute.
man, there's a few things that I've been taking some notes that I want us to ask about. Um, what kind of infrastructure did you end up having to set up or have you set up? Because you said you went into the first one just, yeah, making it up as we go. Have you had to put some very specific, like detailed SOPs, like systems and processes into place and like different software and like what does that end of that side of the business look like?
Yeah, originally I started out for a really long time using just a software, an online software that any portrait photographer could use.
Yep.
And it wasn't made for volume photographers. So it had just some issues that were just really hard workarounds. And it was beautiful and easy to log on to and all great. But just some of the problems that I kept having, I just realized I just need something different. So this year, we recently switched over to Got Photo, which is an online viewing and ordering software. And I didn't want to for so long because it has these like scary fees. But I just realized where I'm at business, I was looking at either hiring a real person or paying a software to do the real person. Not that robots need to take over the world, but hiring a
Right.
real person is really expensive. And I have people on my team. And so I feel paying the money for the awesome volume software was just the next move that I needed to make in my business. So
Yeah.
I really like them, even though I don't look at the bottom line. I'm like, oh, so scary how much money I'm giving them, but it really has worked out and it's really worth it.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. And then as far as having a team, do you have specific, okay, here's what a day looks like. Here's what you need to do. Here's what happens after the session. Do you have all of those kinds of like processes in place?
Well,
You're
I
like, no, but I need to.
should, yeah. No, I only have a photographer in Dallas who works for me during school shoots, and she just takes the photos and dumps them to me. And then I have an assistant here and in Dallas who can help me if I'm in Dallas, if my other photographer can't, or help my other photographer. They're both named Jessica, so it's really just complicated.
Jessica's. Yeah.
The Jessicas, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I have an assistant here who will help me day of. And then I'm also hiring a photographer here who can help me with bigger schools. But I don't have anybody helping me with the day-to-day things. But I have gotten some advice from other photographers, volume photographers, to cut down on like the amount of emails that I get, just different
Mm,
tricks like having meetings with the schools before the photos, the photo day, just to hash out the details so I don't get
yeah.
every email about what they need to do just so I can get it out there all on the phone and answer all their questions.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's smart. So basically, I don't know. It's almost like you should be setting expectations before the session.
Yes.
Where have we heard that? No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So then what are the deliverables then typically for the school themselves and for the parent? What are they typically getting?
Yeah, so the parents have 2 weeks to order a variety of project products, and I try to not make them look like ugly school things like a coffee cup with your kid's photo on there. I just think that's so ugly. So
Yeah.
there's some personal things that I just won't do. I try to offer high-end things like acrylic blocks and metals and frames, but honestly, as much as I put that on my product information list, parents are really buying prints and digitals. And coming from IPS, I'm like, don't buy the digitals. But honestly,
Right.
in a volume context, like I love when they buy the digitals
Makes
because I'm not
sense.
getting paid before I do any of these photos. The digitals is really where I make a lot of my money from. And so the parents have 2 weeks to order any physical products and get free shipping to the school. And what the free shipping means is batch shipping. So I batch them all together and ship them out to the school. And that is where Got Photo has really transformed. They like do that all for me and package it in packages with the kid's name on it. So I don't do any of
Oh
that
yeah, that's cool.
anymore. And that's also the lab color ink that I used that does that too for me. So that's just another thing that I was thinking, oh, I need to do this. But now I'm like, I don't need
Yeah.
to do that anymore. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they
So every time you look at their fees, then just have a little framed picture for yourself of the packaged prints that you
yeah.
can just be like, oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And then after the 2 weeks, if they want to purchase anything else, they can choose ship to home. And during the 2 weeks, they can choose to pay for shipping to their house too, which a lot of people do. Yeah, that's basically how it works.
Cool. And is there a margin of profit built into the shipping as well? So that if they do choose to have it shipped to their house, you're at least getting a little bit of profit on the shipping?
With my new system, I think there's only an option to pay what the lab charges, which is fine because then you can just increase the product fees for it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's cool. And then do you do anything like, are you doing, I think you mentioned doing yearbooks and stuff for the schools. Are the
Mhm.
schools, is that like part of the deal or is that something they pay an additional fee to get? And how does that work?
So there's two different things. So there's actual yearbooks that we are thinking of yearbooks, and I work with a company called Studio Source Yearbooks, and they're actually made for little photographers like me wanting to sell their photos in a yearbook. So they handle all of I set up a storefront and they can buy the yearbook there, and the yearbook advisor then designs the yearbook, and that's separate. And usually the school it's all worked out in the contract, like how much I set the price for the yearbook, so it's whatever the company's going to charge me, and then I can charge whatever I think is right for the yearbooks. And then there's also something so cute that I've offered this year that I'm so proud of, is I worked with a designer and made a preschool memory book, which is just a fancy way of saying yearbook, but it sounds silly if you say preschool yearbook. So you have to say preschool memory book.
Perfect.
And it's just so cute. The school sends me their photos, and it's a template that I use on Canva that she designed for me. And one school wanted all their grad photos in it of their preschoolers, and then from events throughout the year. So I'm also offering that on top of the preschool photos just to increase just some other holes in my business or revenue. And there's other incentives. If you buy the preschool memory book, then you get the class photo for free and stuff like that. So
Ah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's
yeah,
cool. So I would imagine that those editing sessions are basically filled. Oh,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
like the anytime you say like preschool graduation, I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
I know,
yeah,
it's so
perfect.
cute.
And how about like other, or do you run any other types of promotions or anything throughout the year heading into Christmas or right around like graduation time? Are you like reopening those galleries or anything to get additional sales there?
Yeah, during Christmas, I'll offer, and this actually started with COVID, these virtual photos with Santa. So parents can purchase these Etsy templates that I've bought with a Santa, and he's holding this frame, and then I'll put their school photo in the frame. So it's you don't have to have your kid cry if they visit the real Santa. Let me just put your awesome school photo as Santa
Yep.
photo. So that's good. And then I can also send out campaigns. Don't forget your Christmas gifts. Photos make
Yep.
the great Christmas present. So just working in how to resell the same products that I've already sold
Yeah.
to them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. That's great. That's great. Oh, what ages are you typically working with? What age kids?
With I say preschools, but I think that sometimes means differently to different people. So some of the schools I'm actually going into are daycare 4 months sometimes, or
Oh,
actually some
wow.
some of the
Okay.
schools have 6-week-old babies. So like the floppy babies. That's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just call them the floppy babies.
Perfect.
It's really hard because I'm mostly set up for preschoolers and I don't have
Yeah.
a lot of like newborn. I mean, you're basically a newborn at 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, 6 weeks, those aren't a lot of the kids, but they're mostly like in the twos and threes and fours range. I mean, my 600 school is from K through 11th grade. It's just a variety of
Yeah.
things. We do change, obviously, age appropriately how we're working with the kids and trying to get those genuine reactions. We don't do all the same thing to
Yeah.
high schoolers as we
Well,
would with
you're
the
not
floppy
like
babies.
you're not offering the middle schoolers marshmallows, huh?
No, no marshmallows.
Yeah, maybe. Man, the middle schoolers were the worst. The middle schoolers were the worst. When I was doing this, it was really just me personally, because I feel like as soon as I step foot inside a middle school, it's like every kid can zero in on it, exactly what it is that you're self-conscious about. And then they just say it. You're like, oh, I hate middle schoolers. It just reminded me of being in middle school again.
I really find that like just self-deprecation is really the
Yeah.
best way. Like being like,
Yeah.
this is really weird. I'm really sorry. Mom's gonna load this photo up and put it on your fridge. Like you're gonna want to get
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It's, you're not going to want to be making that face.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the one. Yeah, you're going to have to look at this. This is going to be shown at your reception, at your wedding reception.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's not what
totally.
you're going to want. Yeah. Awesome. Let's see. One thing I do want to go back to that you mentioned that I just love, and I'm not sure that there's really anything more to unpack to this, but I want to bring it up again, was this idea that like you got, you really chased this down because it allowed you to work during your kids' school hours. And I just think it's such a brilliant way to solve two problems. I want to own this business, but I also don't want to be working all the time when my kids are at home. So how can I work while they're at school? I want to just photograph other schools. Like that's
Yeah.
You know, like, it's such an obvious thing, but it just makes so much sense. So I love that. I love that. I feel like it's such an elegant solution to the problem that I think basically every photographer is dealing with, at least every parent photographer is dealing with. And all right, cool. Let's say somebody's listening to this and they are just like just our normal kind of photographer that we deal with, and that's portrait or wedding photographer. And they think, hey, you know what? I think I want to try this. Where do they get started? How do they do something like this?
I would suggest hosting some sort of, I guess you would call it a pop-up or mini session of tell your clients that you already have that you are interested in hosting a back to school photo session and just to get some sort of volume worked in there because photographing kids for, let's just say, 5 minutes is really different than photographing them for a family session.
Yeah.
And so there's different things that you need to work out, like in your head and with your camera, maybe
Yeah.
prepared with. And so I feel like that is a great way to start. And also, you can just offer these great portraits that they're probably not getting. So you probably have interest there. The
Yeah.
competition is not very good. Just starting there. And then you can obviously use that portfolio that you've created to approach schools. And you just have to remember when you're approaching schools that it's a business. And so
Yeah.
you have to be very business oriented, not showing up in a t-shirt when you go. Yeah. Don't go, Chris. But just because your competition, if you think of the big companies, are very put together and they have all the answers. And as much confidence as I found that I got doing IPS, I now have so much more confidence too, just in school photography. And I always just like to say, just fake it. If you don't know the answer, like just not make it up, but just sound confident in what you're going to say and have an answer for those questions that you're going to do. Like, just don't go, oh, I don't know. Like, you're the photographer, you're
Yeah.
the owner of the business. Like, just you can make your self sound intelligent and have the answers. Because
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
companies, the other competitors are going to have the answers too. And as much as you can say my photos are more beautiful than the other competition, which probably they are going to be, you still have to have all your business things together and be smooth for the school. I often tag us as the solution to the school photo problem because
Yep.
the school photo problem isn't just bad photos. Like it is bad photos, but there are also other problems. It's the communication with the customers and the communication with the schools and showing up late to the schools. Like all these things
Yeah.
are just terrible in the
Yeah.
school photo industry. And so if you can address those and sound really confident to the schools, it's going to be an easy-ish sell to the
Yep.
schools.
Yep. And I really like what you just said because it shows a true understanding of the problem for the actual buyer, for the person you actually are selling here. As photographers, we look at this. I think if you walk up to 100 professional photographers right now and you say, what's the problem with school photos? That 99 of them are going to say they suck. Like the photos are
Right.
terrible. The school doesn't care about that.
No,
The
they
school
don't.
doesn't care about that. They care in that if it's a fundraiser for them, then okay, maybe they'll sell more if the photos are better. Really, they don't even, I just don't think that's a big deal to them. But
Yeah.
the things they do care about are the other ones you said: lack of communication, crews showing up late or just not showing up at all, the professionalism of the people inside their school, just being able to trust that like you're not going to bring some rando into the school. And yeah, I think that it just shows such a great knowledge and understanding of what the real problem is to the person that you're selling. Because again, like if you say, oh, we take better photos, they're going to be like, cool. So what? Yeah. But if instead you say, we're going to be here on time, we're not going to have lack of communication, we pride ourselves on this and this, all the things that are their pain points. And they're like, all
Right.
right, yeah, sign me the heck up.
Yeah,
So
totally.
that's great. That's fantastic. Okay, so what's next for you? Are you have 15 schools. Do you want to have 1,500 one day? Or like what's the plan?
I really like to transition out of flying to Dallas like 3 times a year And it's funny because I got into school photography so I could be with my kids more, but now I'm flying to Dallas. And sometimes
Right.
in the past, I've had to fly for 2 weeks. I was gone,
Mm,
which was really tough, but I've whittled it down to 1 week. So I feel like that's okay. But I'd like to transition my Dallas team to be able to handle all of that for me. And we're not really trying to sign on any new Dallas schools, but I feel like they totally could handle it. So
yeah.
I feel very confident in my Dallas team. And so not flying out there would help me to be able to sign more schools on now because now I'm just running into the problem of I don't have any more time. Sorry, which is cool. But yeah, I could definitely benefit for signing on some more schools here in Florida and more local schools because I'm now traveling to like Orlando and west of Orlando, which is even
Yeah.
further. So yeah, just some more local schools would be good. It's
Yeah.
scary to especially hiring photographers to
Yeah.
do what I'm doing. Not that it's not super hard, but there is just some training involved. But I just need to. It's
Yeah.
really scary to like let your business go like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, one thing I do want to make sure we talk about, because I think that it is a pretty big distinction with what you're doing, is basically what we just talked about. You- They're actually getting better photos also. Like, these are not typical school photos. I feel like we skipped over that fact that, like, when somebody gets these school photos from you, and maybe we should have led with this so that people who are listening can understand, like, this is a different breed of school photos. So talk to us about what your kids, your clients or whatever, what your
Yeah,
photos look like for your schools.
yeah. A lot of other photographers say that this style is boutique school photos. I don't typically use that word. I don't know why, but the difference is most school companies are using the green screen and parents can choose like the American flag and the I don't know, that's what they do in Texas, is American flag in the barn or something. In Florida, they do like the rocket on the beach. So we don't do green screens. We choose a single neutral colored background, and most of the time it's seamless paper, and it looks amazing. And we do a aperture of 2.5, which gives the portrait style look, which isn't. I don't think even the photographers who are working with the school photography companies can even adjust their camera settings. No. So I don't know what
I
aperture they use, but it's definitely not
literally you can.
2.5. Yeah. Yeah.
I can still tell you
That's
it's
so
13. Yeah.
terrible. I mean, it presents problems using 2.5, but it just provides this really creamy look that they can't pinpoint why it looks better, but that's
Yep.
why it looks better. Now I'm loving inside photos. It's more studio style, which is really funny because I was against that for a really long time. And we're using one strobe and the other 2.5, and we're working with them for about 1 to 2 minutes, and they're getting a variety of looks. So when people say, why don't I get background choices? We say, you don't get background choices, but you get a variety of looks. And we've worked out a formula. And that sounds so terrible to say, but when you're working in volume, you really do have to have a formula. So mostly when we're working with preschoolers, we have this monkey, and the monkey will say hi and then tickle the belly. And the monkey says moo. And that's like our funniest joke ever. And they're like laughing. And so parents get laughing photos, and then they will ask them to pinch their ear. So they get this little cute photo, and then we'll have them like turn around. And we have this system so that their lower portion of their body is still because they're super wiggly and they're
Yeah.
just doing little movements, which is popular right now in the portrait, like family photography posing system of just different looks in a short amount of time because you really want to multiply the amount of looks that you can get so that they're like, I just want them all, I can't
Yep.
decide.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I think we've heard people call it flow posing, where it's like
Yeah,
we have a specific flow where they're going to do this, then this. And yeah, I don't think you almost apologized for it. No, that's the name of the game. If you don't have these systems in place, then you're not working as efficiently and as effectively as you can.
yeah. And we
So
do I like to say that we're a Montessori posing system, if that's even a thing, where Montessori works with the child and is child led. If the child seems very scared of our monkey, then I'm not gonna force the monkey. The monkey goes to sleep and I throw the monkey and I talk in a really quiet voice. If the child is using a quiet voice. And alternatively, if they're a high school student and they're like totally acting like they are too cool for me, then I'm gonna act like they are too cool for school photos. And just modeling that because I
yep.
feel like that gets you so far in what you can get from a kid.
Yeah, isn't it funny how much psychology plays a part in posing when it comes to kids and in the
Yeah.
different age ranges and all of that? That's brilliant. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that that was clear for people listening. Is these are not the same types of photos that you're going to get. I can tell you for a fact that okay, so it's been a couple of years now since I did this. Gosh, it's been a minute. We would roll in with literally it was like a belt system that was like taped off, and you like tape down the spot where the camera's going to be, and then you
Yeah.
lay out these belts, and that tells you exactly where your kid's going to sit, and where your two lights are going to be, and where your third light's going to be, and then yeah, all of the settings on the camera were literally locked.
Yeah.
So there was zero thought that it went into it, which is the point when you
Yeah.
have to have consistent photos for a yearbook and stuff like that. But yeah, it is about as rote as it can be. You just do these things, and if you go outside of that, then we're gonna have to send you back and do
Right.
all of those students again and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, this is such a different approach to what we typically teach over here, and I really love that you're making this work. Do you feel like once you stop traveling, do you feel like this is going to give you that business that you've wanted? I know that you and I have talked about this for years now. Is this idea of I just want to be able to spend more time with my kids while also like contributing in a meaningful way to my family's finances. Do you feel like when you can stop traveling to Texas, that maybe this will be it?
I feel like it's happened in this last year. So that's really great. I have now stopped photographing in the summer and really working in the summer, which is great because I can count how many summers I have left with my oldest, which is really sad. And so I really want to
Wait,
make the most of those, especially before he gets like too cool for hanging out with mom during the summer. So yeah, I really feel like it has given me the flexibility to do all those things that I want it,
yeah,
and even more so when I stop traveling to Texas.
right. Yeah. Just, I'm going to go ahead and put it out there that I don't think he's ever going to act too cool to hang out with mom because there's a cool kid you got there. Yeah. He's a really cool kid. Both of them are just
Oh,
great
thanks.
kids. We got to, for anybody listening, we got to go trick or treating with them this year. We happened to be traveling through Florida over Halloween, and just some truly cool kids. I think I could pick at a lot of these different things, but I think that's a pretty good overview. You know what? Let's do this. Pros and cons for somebody thinking about doing something like this. What would you say are the pros for doing something like this over
Yeah,
traditional low volume, high touch?
I feel like a natural pro for someone who is already doing IPS or maybe thinking about doing IPS is that it fits in really well because you don't give the digitals.
Hmm.
You have to buy what you want. And so when I get inquiries from school families who want family photos, they never assume that I give the digitals. And so that's
Yeah.
a very easy transition to do. And another pro, speaking of that, is that it creates this really solid base of I know so many people in town. For instance, I know somebody running for the school board now because I photographed their son.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome, and I see them all over town, and
Yep.
so you have this base clients where you can tap into them if they need headshots and family photos, and if you're into wedding photos, then it's just this continual flow of people that now know.
I thought we were done, and then you mentioned that, and it was something that I needed to ask, and I didn't have it in my notes. But I could see this if you don't go the full 15 schools or whatever. Let's say you stop at two or three. I could see this as being a really solid, consistent way to bring in new families into your just everyday family photo portrait
Right.
business.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I love
it
that
is.
if you're setting an expectation that like, yeah, you're not going to get digitals from me.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It is a little different, school photography and family photography, like, bringing those people over is a little difficult, but the families that I have brought over to my family side, like, they drop thousands of dollars into family photography, which with me each year. They're my solid base, and I didn't have to go hunt for them, like, they just found
Yeah.
it, and it's really great.
Yeah.
It is a little different because the price points for things are different because you have that whole batch shipping and the whole volume. And if you make it a little bit smaller with family photography, you're working with more people and more time and stuff like
Yep.
that. So it is a little different originally to get them set on prices, change and stuff like that. But there's
Yeah.
obviously ways to transition them.
Yeah. I feel like that's even more of a reason for you to position your full family sessions as print product sessions, like
Yeah.
framed prints. These are the whole point of this is for books and wall art and stuff like that. Whereas the whole
Yeah.
point of the kids' school photos are going to be the digitals and the small prints.
Yeah. And
That's
too, there are so many, the families that I do photograph from the schools, they won't buy their school photos until I've photographed their family photos. And so they can put their school photos up on the wall, like with their
yeah,
family photos.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. This is awesome. This is awesome. Okay.
Oh, I didn't go with the
Cons.
con. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
cons.
And that probably wasn't like my whole pro list, but I feel like that's pretty good.
Oh yeah,
That
sorry. If there were more, then go
well,
for it. But
I think maybe just like working when your kids are in school, that we already talked about that. I think the cons is that it's maybe just a little bit challenging to get in with. But once you're in, once you have that one or two schools, then they share it with their friends, and their friends
yeah.
are preschool directors or principals. So that's great. And this is a pro, sorry to go back, but
Oh, you're fine.
speaking of that, as a family photographer and as a wedding photographer, you look out and you're like, where are my potential clients? But with schools, you're like, I know their address and their phone number, and you can easily find out the director's name. So you have
Yep.
all of that information at your fingertips.
Yep. Yeah. And something that we haven't mentioned is that you are primarily photographing preschools and you said like daycare, stuff like that. I'm assuming that gets you around the issue of having to deal with contracts with a public school system might have with a company like Life Touch or these like massive nationwide school chain of companies. Am I assuming that correctly?
So with the big school company, the big schools, you do have to become a vendor of that school district usually. Not that hard. But then also people are very scared by the word of contract, and literally like Life Touches contract, like you can just say you want to end it and that's it. Like there's no like, we're gonna take away your blah blah blah. The only thing is if you've signed a yearbook contract with them, then they typically take like process a fee for to use their yearbook editing software. But even as a small business, I'm willing to pay that money to buy out their contract because it's really not that much money. I feel like people are scared. Oh, I have a contract with Lifetouch or this other company, but it's really not that scary. You just break the
Yeah.
contract.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because I think that would keep a lot of photographers from even considering it, not knowing that, hey, look, these contracts are really not that crazy. They're not scary. And
Yeah.
and the consequences of breaking them are really just these negligible fees. And
And I think,
now you own that contract. Yeah.
right. And two, I think there's other ways. Like if the school's not happy, then they can break the contract. I don't know. I
Yep.
think there's ways to get around with ending the contract.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Cool. Do you tend to work with public schools at all though? Or are you
Um,
working with these like private and like just individual one-off schools?
Mostly these one-off schools. I do have a few private and a charter school, but I think that's not really because of the whole contracts and vendor thing. I think it's because the public schools, they really like, not to be offensive, but they like think in a box and they think that school
Mm.
photos have to be like this. And so the other schools, they're smaller. And so they can think a little bit more
Yep.
creatively.
Yep.
And so they're more willing to try something new.
Yep. Yeah. If you think about that's the same as pretty much anything. Once the organization gets bigger, there are
Yeah.
a lot more people that has to go through. Decisions take longer to make, and
Yeah.
they're going to stick with it's. We know it works. It's a known quantity, so we'll just stick with what we know already. Yeah, that
Right.
makes sense. That makes sense. Um, this is awesome. If somebody wants to reach out to you to learn more about this, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, my school photo company is called Those Photo Ladies, which is just so quirky and fun. I always giggle when people like, "Hi, can I speak to those photo ladies?" It's just so funny.
You can speak to one of them.
Yes, one of the many. So yeah, I don't know, our website is probably the best way to view our work and then use contact information there. It's something also a pro about school photos that I feel like I don't really have to put everything out there for social media. We are on social media, but I don't have time to work that
Yeah.
out. So it's definitely a different game than
Yeah.
other photographers. Yeah.
Excellent.
so
So
where
is
you can
that
find me,
postphotoladies.com?
ladies.com. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah.
It's always good seeing you. I hope we can make it
Yeah.
back down
You too.
there again.